Okay, welcome back. We're going to talk about another style of drawing called cross-hatching. And cross-hatching is traditionally done as a way to put illustrations in magazines and books and newspapers. So when newspapers were invented, if they wanted artwork in there or a picture of something or a cartoon, it had to be done in ink. And it was used in etching in metal plates, sometimes in carved out of wood. But the history of cross-hatching as a drawing technique goes, way, way, way back. So once you've mastered value drawing with a pencil, then the next step is to move into cross-hatching. This is an example of a cross-hatched drawing of a woman that came from this photograph. So you can see this is probably the first time they've done some cross-hatch drawing, and it's a pretty good likeness. It's not an exact likeness, but it's a pretty good likeness. So there's all sorts of cartoonish type of drawing, fantasy type of drawing. But we're going to start off, we're going to talk about cross-hatching and how we're going to go about the cross-hatching assignment for the first steps. The first steps of the cross-hatching is we're going to be using ink. Now, I'm going to allow you, and I want you to use pencil to sketch everything in. I even as a trained artist, I don't go out and start doing ink drawing without having a pencil line laid down so I know where everything's going to go. So I always start off with a light sketch to let me know where everything's going to go, because once the ink is put down on paper, you're not erasing the ink. So, but it's done with an ink pen, and it's done in ink. Whether you use blue ink, black ink, whatever kind of ink, pink, purple, I don't care what kind of ink you use, but you're using a pen, and not a flare tip pen and not a Sharpie, because those lines are too thick and they just block everything up. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about a value scale, and then we're going to do the 4 shapes in cross-hatching, and you've had experience doing the 4 shapes with pencil value. Now you're going to do them with cross-hatching value, and then you're going to do the 4x4, and all of these 3 activities are going to build up your cross-hatching techniques and give you some skills that you need. So a value scale, we're going to use 3 techniques, and there's a 4th technique called stippling. It just makes a lot of noise and it's very time consuming, because stippling is taking the pen and putting a lot of dots, and the closer the dots are together, the darker the area and the further the dots are apart from one another, the lighter the area. It just makes a lot of noise. If you can imagine 30 students in a classroom all doing this on the table, it would be quite a noise. So we stay away from hatching, plus it's time consuming. But there's some beautiful stippling artwork, and you may want to look that up. This example, if you get on the internet and you type in your search bar cross-hatch drawing with ink, you type in stippling, there's all sorts of things that you can find for resources on the internet. But hatching is a series of lines going one way, and we'll do this in the pencil value. And cross-hatching is also the same amount of lines, but except they're doubled because they go the second direction. And scribbling, sometimes it's called figure 8, but here's the concept. The more lines you have and the closer they are together, the darker the value. The further the lines are apart, the more separation and the more paper you see, the lighter the area. So you can see that these things get gradually darker as they go, because there's more ink and less paper showing through. So, as far as a technique goes, if you wanted to start off and you do 10 lines, and then over here in the next box you do 20 lines, and in the next box you do 30 lines, if that's what it takes. Now, noticing in cross-hatching, this is not a back and forth pattern that I'm doing. I'm picking the pen up every time and putting it down every time. And I'm not zigzagging back and forth, because if you zigzag back and forth, you end up with these loops at the end, and it ends up looking like scribble. So the more and the closer the lines are together, the darker the area is going to be. And again, you don't want it. You want to make sure that your lines are getting closer and closer together so that your area is darker. So cross-hatching, you come back, and if you had 10 lines going the other way, you have 10 lines going this way. This is 20 lines. This is 30 lines, all closer to this. Is the same concept. It just very logical and makes sense. The more lines, if you have for cross-hatching. So hatching is a single set of lines, and cross-hatching is when they cross. The scribble is simple. If you're looking at scribble here, I like to call it figure 8 because I like to do a figure 8 type pattern. But you could do ovals and figure 8s. I think that when you start doing the scribbling back and forth, it ends up starting to look like the texture of hatching and cross-hatching. So for the scribble, I like to see some kind of a figure 8 type thing done, or circular type thing done, or combinations, and even some back and forth like this if you want. But if you're doing only scrubbing back and forth, it's going to look like, even if it's got a lot, you have to have these curved figure 8 or circular things, or it's going to look like hatching and cross-hatching. And you have to look at this. This is an interesting texture. If you were trying to make, you needed a textural thing for a background or for material, shirts and cloth, or that's not why you'd use this. It just gives you another option in your techniques for creating value with ink pen. So let me show you some examples of what the 4x4 looks like. Here's the 4 shapes done in cross-hatching. These are, you want to try to get rid of these lines. If these lines are done in pencil, you should be able to stop your ink line at that pencil line and then erase that pencil line later. So these dark lines here really shouldn't be showing. If you're doing a good job with cross-hatching, you don't need that sharp line right there. It's just where these things end will create the illusion. It's the same thing with this. And if you were having to do that, I would recommend that you do something that's more on the lines of a broken line like this. Maybe pick your pen up and make a broken line. If you had to have a hard line like this for your cone, if it's a broken line, then all the other lines stop there. It looks better than trying to stop all of your light lines at that. You want to try to avoid that. Still, they did a very good job with the stippling. So this is part 1 is your value scale. There's your part 1. There's 6 blocks. You want to have a little space in between each block, just like we always do. And then you want to do your 4 shapes. Some of you may need to practice. You may have to practice this all week to get to where you can get the 4 shapes done. It's not do this one time. It's keep practicing this until you can use your cross-hatching and your cross-hatching ink technique to where you can create these 4 shapes where they look realistic, like we did when we did the pencil value. Then you're going to have your 4x4, which is going to look like this example here. There's a horizon line in the back. I don't know if you need per se that, but there's their 4 cones. I mean, your 4 spheres. There's the 4 cones. All right, there's your 4 cylinders, and there's your 4 cubes are in there. So this constitutes the complete cross-hatching assignment in ink. You must use an ink pen. So once you have those 3 done, you're done with that assignment, and then we'll turn that in for grading.